Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and thanks for joining us today for Modern Connectivity for today's finance organization. My name is Chris on the marketing team, and we're glad to have you here. During the webinar today, you're in listen-only mode, so please submit your questions to us via the webinar control panel. Having any technical issues, you can chat us using the panel itself, or you can use the contact number here. We do have CTP and FP&A credits available for the session, as well as the slides and the recording. So those will be sent to you within 3 business days. So likely Monday at the very latest. Happy to share with everybody our presenters today. Joining us from Blackline, Anjali Kool is the Director of Partner Enablement. Anjali, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. And from our friends over at Clearsulting, Kevin Stevens joins us. He's the Director of Treasury Technology. Hi, Kevin. How you doing?
Hey, Chris. Doing well. Thank you.
Excellent. And finally, Brian Blehavdi is with us from Kyriba. He is the Senior Director of Treasury Product Marketing. Welcome, Brian. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And before we get started, we'd like to have Anjali do a quick introduction overview of Blackline, and then we'll have Kevin also respectfully introduce his organization as well.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about Blackline. Blackline is an accounting automation company, but it offers solution in 3 main categories. The first one is financial close management. Can we have the next slide, please? And so financial close management is basically bringing data together from different sources. Connectivity, automation, and standardization of data transfer starts the story of Blackline. So to take it from the top, we start here, creating and using modern connectivity tools to ensure all the data, all relevant data for close is imported into the system and creating Blackline, a single source of truth. Obviously, bank data transfer is one of the key data import processes that helps Blackline's clients deal with their close process, and Kyriba helps us bring that critical piece. Data import is not only ensuring the connection, not the conveyor belt, but creating a seamless automated process. And standardizing the import using the templates brings that ability to bridge the gap, reduce errors, cut time, and reduce risks. The second part is accounting automation. Blackline helps us reduce repetitive and leaves time for higher value work. And we can start shifting resources from getting the job done, then actually telling the entire story that data is here to tell us. And we can focus on matters and go deep into the strategic work. Last but not the least, we help companies ensure intercompany governance, and this is a global problem. With increasing M&A, we have companies that have multiple ERPs and multiple entities, and they want end-to-end solution to this global problem. Implementing single source process to create, post, and settle intercompany transaction. Blackline can help you do that. So in short, Blackline provides you connectivity with external data sources, and Kyriba is a great partner to have with us. And then we also help you automate processes within accounting, and then ensuring that we can do that at a global level. So that's over to next speaker, Kevin.
Thanks, Anjali. So as Chris mentioned, I am from Clearsulting. I'm the Director of Treasury Technology there. Clearsulting, for those of you not familiar, is a management consulting firm that specializes in transformational projects in the Office of Finance. At Clearsulting, my team sits in the Treasury Department, and we specialize in Treasury consulting services as well as Kyriba transformations. We also work very closely with our R2R colleagues, who are the leading partners for Blackline implementations. So while we have other practices, I'll stop with those two because that's going to be the crux of our conversation today. I'm very much looking forward to talking about how technology and connectivity allows both of our systems, Blackline and Kyriba, to work on their own, but also allows them to start talking to each other in seamless ways. Chris, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and also wanted to thank the audience for their patience there with the slight lag and delay on the slide deck, but everything should be good now. This is our agenda for today. First, we're going to talk a little bit about just the overall connectivity, defining the important IT and finance engagement projects, the business impact, and the evolution of connectivity. Then we'll go to Anjali for the what does it mean for accounting, and then follow that up with the and for treasury, finance transformation, and then we'll get to the Q&A. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Brian to get us started.
So, hi everyone. Again, Brian Lehebdi, I'm Director of Product Marketing at Kyriba. Been involved in treasury projects and treasury technology and business process transformation for the past 20 some odd years. And so happy to talk to you today about the connectivity landscape for treasurers and finance practitioners and professionals, as well as some of the advances that we're seeing in the industry. Kyriba looks at connectivity, you know, from a holistic standpoint. We're looking at the integration and it's when you're talking about connectivity, it's also not only just the systems that are being connected. It's in the delivery of files, and you know, everyone talks about bank statements as a starter for this, but it's really much more than that. It's the integration of, it can be at times disparate global financial systems. It can be not only the solutions, but the features and the processes that are included within that. And it's much more than just banks. It can be, as Anjali mentioned in her introduction, it can be ERPs, it can be revenue and billing systems, procurement systems, reconciliations, external GLs, and all the way down to accounting and financial reporting. And all of this becomes a consolidated, integrated landscape that delivers data and information for better decision making. So it's gone much more beyond just the connection of your banks to other systems as well. And all of this now is becoming much more automated and much more seamless with application processing interfaces, APIs, which we're going to talk about much more a little bit later. And we're talking about real-time or even instant delivery of information to the banks, to your ERPs, and ultimately through dashboards and reporting back to your leadership. Treasury and finance now has the ability at much more advanced levels than before to get information much faster and not rely on batches or schedule-based processing. All of this is enabled through more modern connectivity through APIs. And of course, all of this, as we define connectivity and look at it, we always want to provide 24/7 global command centers that follow the sun with support as well.
Yeah, I think that's an important last point, Brian. What we often see with clients is that they have to manage IT in treasury, cash management. If a bank statement doesn't show up, they have to understand why it's not there. And with Kyriba, one of their clear differentiators is that support. If a file from JP Morgan doesn't arrive at 3 a.m., maybe by the time you wake up, Kyriba has fixed that break. That's a huge value add, and it shows that connectivity is not just the advances you get in terms of technology, it's also the support you get when that technology temporarily breaks.
No, great points. I appreciate that. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And when we're looking at sort of going back and starting at the systems level, we're seeing a much more transition to a multi-cloud approach. When I first started doing projects and first started doing implementations of SAP, treasury management systems, and Oracle, the mantra was, well, we're trying to consolidate everything from an ERP standpoint into one system. Well, now there's a shift to the realization that that's not always the best approach, because even with the advent of cloud-based ERPs, it's still a multi-cloud approach is a much better way to deliver the right level of connectivity and responsiveness and project delivery as well. You could replace banks on the left side of this diagram with any other external system, market data provider, trading platform, Bloomberg, Refinitiv for market data. You much greater when you have these specialized cloud-based solutions.
Yeah, and I would add that this model is what we're seeing more and more as our clients in Kyriba are thinking about integrating BlackLine. There's now a clear single arrow, as you can see here, where Kyriba can be the main source to all your different banks, other financial institutions, and then seamlessly integrate that information and upon an event-driven call, forward it directly to BlackLine. So if your bank statement's missing, you have a single path to troubleshoot the reason, right? Is it missing from Kyriba? Okay, let's investigate with the bank. Is it missing from BlackLine? Okay, let's investigate with Kyriba. You don't have to manage multiple sources of connections to different systems, to different FIs. There's a clear delineation on it in terms of how that data is moved.
Yep. Yeah, the fact is that in this slide, we'll go ahead and move on. Thanks, Chris. When we're talking about just even going back to the basics with bank connectivity, you still want, why is it challenging for companies? And one reason for that, and one reason why a specialized leading solution is sort of desired and needed, is because you have a great deal of, even with bank connectivity alone, you have a great deal of communication protocols, different formats to meet those protocols, or proprietary format requirements, and then all of the security that has been developed over the past decade or two to meet all the fraud and compromise types of scams that are out there. So starting with the left, you can see that there's been a number of not only regional and global clearing systems or networks that have been established, SWIFT probably being one of the more prominent ones, but then there's regional clearing systems like EBIX, there's FTP across the board, the UK has BACS. The main message and the takeaway from this particular slide is that there are a number of different protocols, and that's why it becomes a challenge for many companies to move into new regions and be agile and have some nimble capabilities, is because of all these different clearing systems and bank proprietary requirements, which takes us into the next category. Once you have a SWIFT or a specific regional type of communication protocol or network like SWIFT, like EBIX, you have to also have there's a number of standards that have developed from a file format. And some of those have come about from reporting. Some of you may recognize EDI 822s, which is a very common bank fee reporting format. There's XML, ISO 222 formats for SEPA payments in Europe, in the European Union, in the SEPA payments region, MT formats for SWIFT. The main point here to take away is that there's a large variety and it continues to expand. And while much of it has been standardized, and there's been some various initiatives like the Greater Payments Initiative, the Global Payments Initiative, there's still a wide variety of requirements and formats out there that have to be tackled whenever you're talking about adding new banks or expanding into new regions. And then, of course, further to that is, well, how do you secure it? PGP being one of the more common ones for that have been used, at least in North America. 3S Key, some of these things that are oftentimes another challenge for IT to meet, with banks offering different standards or requiring different standards for that. Then, so 93% of CIOs and IT directors were recently surveyed, and they've responded that this was one of the biggest challenges for them. And some of it goes back to the challenges that I mentioned before, the formats, the security, and just really working with most companies that I've seen have anywhere from 3 to 10 primary banks that have been developed as primary relationship banks, whether that's for debt service, or it's just to meet certain regional needs and presence in certain areas of the world, whether it's Latin America or there's certain banks that just have a larger presence. Well, when you add in and try to expand the ERP migrations into an area that has 5 different banks, your challenges become multiplied, and the complexity, the meeting, the time to test, and the bank's SLAs, all of that becomes a challenge. And we're primarily talking, we've worked with these banks extensively to develop pre-formatted, pre-configured connections, as well as all the formats are already in our inventory and our arsenal of different tools that we go live with. So that's one of the ways that we tackle and we basically speed up the implementation, is by having these pre-configured, pre-developed formats.
Yeah, I agree. Kyriba's library for payments alone is almost 50,000 different unique scenarios, right? If you're trying to implement a payments project in an ERP and you need substantial development, that could set you back 6 months, could also blow up the budget, right? Being able to use a system that already has tens of thousands of formats validated in production just saves you time, headaches, and gets you using the system in the fastest way possible.
Yeah,
and
another point there, Kevin, is the fact that there's that oftentimes Treasury often manages the bank relationships, and oftentimes Treasury is one of the last teams to be brought into a project. Sometimes they find out about these things after the fact, after it's already been planned. So it's important as part of this is to bring in Treasury into that discussion for any of these bank connectivity projects or ERP integrations for that matter.
Definitely.
And not to forget that it provides the standardization and reduces the risk and errors.
Yeah. So the project, the ERP, yes, thanks, Anjali. The project pain itself and the ERP migration is challenging, and it's been recognized as such by CIOs, by CFOs, treasurers for many years. And some of the other impacts to organizations from these ERP projects, which don't necessarily have to be a greenfield implementation. A lot of times we're talking about changes to integrate multiple ERPs that have either become part of the landscape from M&A activity, from expansion into other areas, or possibly joint ventures that have been divested from, and now you own a new ERP. So in those cases, that's another challenge. And so we're not just talking about major upgrades. These can also be just maintenance, as number 5 indicates here, maintenance and updates. These things are often become mini projects themselves, as some of you may be able to sort of attest to. Is in the past, these things were always weeks of planning, and waiting for release schedules to come about. Going back up to the top, when you are talking about a major project, when you don't have the kind of connectivity that has pre-configured and pre-tested formats, pre-delivered connections that have been provided by your ERP, and then you're going to result in a lengthy timeline oftentimes we're talking about months rather than weeks. So whenever the traditional model is being used, that's what you're going to have as a result. These projects are also hindered and often must sacrifice depth of functionality in favor of the timeline. I've seen it too many times where functionality planned and expected by the business from IT or from the consulting company is often divested from in favor of the timeline, because there's so much testing required, this iterative configuration and going back and forth between your banks or your ERP systems. All of that takes an inordinate amount of time and can delay projects or cause the cancellation of certain functionality that was desired at the beginning. The Treasury team also must be able to make better strategic decision making is impacted. And there's oftentimes when you are talking about an expansion into a new region, you've acquired a business or you're trying to move into a new area, Treasury, tax, finance, the business, manufacturing, they're not going to wait for the system. So oftentimes it results in workarounds until the system can basically catch up and fix all of the manual processes and all of the workarounds that are being done in various homegrown spreadsheets or systems as well. And these estimates on the right speak to the average costs that we've seen for integrating just one new bank can take anywhere from 500 to 1,000 hours under the traditional model. And of course, the other costs here as well, which limits your capacity to add banks annually. It also requires additional headcount. All of these things become extremely costly for organizations.
To say one of your points in a slightly different way, in terms of workarounds, I mean, the point of an ERP implementation is to increase, well, one of the points is to increase automation, reduce fraud, reduce people manually having to touch files to get them into systems, right? But when things don't work exactly as planned, you start building up those contingencies and workarounds. Maybe you have a bank connection that's live or a connection to a bank that's live for some of the payments you make, but not all. It just gets harder and harder to track your controls to make sure they're enforced. It becomes an audit nightmare. So when an implementation does not go as planned and you start building out those workarounds, it becomes very messy and open to fraud, which is the antithesis of the whole project to begin with. So that just calls out how connectivity, it will save you lots of time if done right. If done wrong, it will open up a can of worms that's hard to close.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. So some of the ways you can speed and extend your enterprise connectivity is to use those pre-built bank connectors and payment formats, as I mentioned. Kyriba has an inventory of 50,000 plus different formats that these and other banks use. When you have that pre-configuration, it's much easier to go live, and it's much faster. It takes it from months to weeks. Literally. Defining cache visibility, when you start extending your connectivity to beyond banks, you also start getting better cache visibility. Kyriba delivers liquidity management and liquidity visibility across not only your bank reporting, but you can bring in exposure information for your risk management purposes, for FX, for interest rate exposures, number of different things that allows you to also create a consolidated payments channel and hub. Being able to consolidate your payments to your primary disbursement banks that support AP, whether you're talking about supply chain financing, in-house banking, pay on behalf of models, trading company payments, all of these are able and to be consolidated to a payments hub. And then finally, with once you get your access to your better cash visibility, you're able to proactively manage short-term liquidity. So one of the aspects in the evolution of connectivity away from normal typical file transfer protocol and traditional security models is this, it's been around for a while. It's just now gaining traction with a number of banks and in particular vendors. It's becoming it's becoming the new method and the new way to connect banks, ERPs, trading platforms, market data providers. All of these different vendors and solutions can now connect via APIs, application processing interfaces. And in addition to just reducing implementation time and standardizing connectivity, these provide a much more secure delivery mechanism for treasury, for payments information, working capital. All of this data is now delivered in real time across all these different vendors. Now, this is just a representation. Not all of these are live and ready to go, but I've personally been involved with projects with different investment portals, and the value that they're getting from their perspective, being able to put their and assist their corporate clients with providing an instant channel for investing surplus funds when you're talking about just daily cash positioning and liquidity forecasting, that instant link between the system and the investment portal or the bank for payments, that is just, it's a huge win, and they're already pre-developed. These APIs are already pre-developed, and let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Chris, in the interest of time. I wanted to show a catalog of what Kyriba currently offers in our API developers platform. Some examples of what APIs are available and being developed and refined already to connect with banks, the ERPs, trading portals, and also data within your treasury system or your ERPs to bring that into your treasury system. Being able to bring in FX exposures or other types of information or sending it out to your ERP is all going to be enabled through APIs. And again, just to reiterate, these are pre-built connectors that transfer data in real time between these different systems. So on the right side, you can see some excerpts from our API catalog that covers anything from the payments network for Microsoft Dynamics, Oracle Cloud, SAP, S/4HANA, and ECC as well. Being able to manage your bank groups, bank statement balances. All these APIs are currently either completed or under development. And we have these API links available for its open development currently. As you can see on the bottom, cash balances, cash flows, that's an integration between Kyriba and your ERP to allow you to bring in cash flow information for liquidity forecasting. AP, purchase requisitions, purchase orders, invoices, billing documents from a revenue standpoint. Being able to integrate that into your liquidity forecast is extremely important. I'll pause there.
All right, Brian, thank you so much. With that, we're going to move to a quick 30-second poll just to take everybody's temperature here. Which of these aspects of connectivity do you consider to be the most difficult? Let's get those responses in. We like to get to maybe that 60 to 70% of the audience. Which of these aspects of connectivity do you consider to be the most difficult? And the first answer is working with the banks. Second, partnering with internal IT technology teams. Third, making the case internally for new connectivity technology. And fourth, various banking formats. We've got about 56% of the vote in so far. Then after that, we're going to have Anjali take us away. Let's see, we're getting close to that 60% mark. Let's get there. And we're going to close the poll and share the results with everybody. Looks like this is a bit of a surprise, I think, making the case internally for the new connectivity technology. All right, we're going to hide that and then proceed on with Anjali.
Thank you, Chris. And I really like the poll because it helps us understand the problems. And, especially in the given world that we have so many software solutions and so many people promoting them, the fundamental question I ask as a professional consultant for the last 3 decades is there a problem? Number one, have we understood it? Number two, and have we defined it? Because we can only effectively solve the problem that we have defined and quantified. So this poll helped us understand the problem, at least identify the problem so that we can move on to next step, define and quantify it. This is exactly what we're trying to do here in this slide. What Blackline is trying to do is solve the problem that the clients have. What is the challenge that our clients are facing? They are facing problems with time, increased time that they have to spend doing manual processes, and so many meetings. People have to meet, stand-up meeting, especially during the close. On an average, our clients spend, 40 to 80 hours in a small, mid-sized company. So extremely time-intensive work. And when it's manual work, there's higher risk because you can make more mistakes when you're trying to do things in a non-standardized way. And you cannot have the data visibility because your data is distributed all over your landscape. And what do you do to solve problems when you throw more resources at it? So it becomes a very high cost operations because accountants are not cheap. And when accountants are doing non-accounting work, which is copying the data, moving the data from one system to spreadsheets, and then manually manipulating that data, they're not happy because they're spending a lot of time doing things that are not really accounting related, and reduces the employee morale. Now that we have understood the problems, let's go to the next slide and see what are the connectivity challenges in accounting. So far we saw the normal, issues that we have that our clients have. The connectivity challenges in accounting are very similar to something that we heard in the previous session that Kevin talked about, that Brian talked about. Historically, data is siloed. So we have acquired ERPs in 2 ways. Either they have organically grown with us because the organizations 20 years ago was building ERPs that were more functional. So we had, a payroll or ERP, and then FICO, finance and costing ERP, and then materials management was done separately. So the data was distributed because the way ERPs evolved. But in late 2000s, we had single ERP. SAP will provide you all the functionality, so on and so forth. But the real major impact that happened in getting to a complex technical landscape was because of mergers and acquisitions, and also because the companies getting acquired worldwide in different countries, which have different tax code, which have different ERPs, because the ERPs can be regional and people tend to buy things that are available and supported by people who are there locally. So having that complex technical landscape provided us with, offered us a siloed data, and that had to be brought together. Why did we need the data together? Because if the data is together, then you can report at the corporate level. Then you can understand whether the business is doing well or not. Now, if it was only ERPs, it's complex enough. But then throw in banks at it. And not one bank, multiple banks with multiple ways of looking at data and storing data. We just saw that complex scenario that Brian explained. Then we have multiple point of sale systems, and they're all designed differently because everybody has different indirect taxes set up. And then we have multiple credit card companies and have multiple subledgers. Now that have explained the complexity challenges in detail and different sources this connectivity challenge can come into accounting, let's move on to the next slide and see how Blackline can help us solve the problem of connectivity. So Blackline basically covers the space between the data collection or transaction systems. For example, on the left-hand side of your screen, you're seeing ERP, subledger, banks, and other data. To, on the right-hand side, the output that is expected of an accountant, the reports that are expected, profit and loss account, bank statements, and of course, you have to see the financial integrity. You have to see, you have to do reporting and analytics. Blackline sits right in the middle of it. Bank's part is complex, so we replace that with Kyriba. So Blackline has a natural relationship with Kyriba to bring the bank data into Blackline. So now Blackline clients don't have to talk to multiple banks and get into SLAs and understand the services and negotiate with each and every one of them. But instead, we put Kyriba between Blackline and banks, and the data connectivity problem, at least with banks, is taken care of. Now, ERP issues can be handled by Blackline's connectors that Blackline offers to their clients. So we have ERP connectors for SAP, Oracle, NetSuite, Microsoft Dynamics, Intact, and many more are in progress. So we are standardizing the process of bringing the data. So it's not just creating a bridge, it's also creating the process, standardizing that process, creating templates, and bringing data in such a way that it stays consistent and recognizable at every stage. And of course, and secure data, because whenever your data is sitting on network, it's not safe. So what we were doing earlier was bringing data from ERPs and other subledgers into Excel. I love Excel. I grew up with Excel, but that data is sitting on it becomes static as soon as you save your file. And of course, the data is sitting on network and it's not secure. And version control is my pet peeve. So let's move to the next slide and see how we can build a unified, automated, and continuous process. So Blackline and Kyriba partnership helps us address the bank reconciliation challenge, which is common with Blackline customers as well as with Kyriba customers. And the partnership enables our customers to leverage Kyriba as a subledger technically, and one more source of data, another subledger that we're just talking to Kyriba and bringing data in. It provides us faster time to value because we don't have to spend all those hours in not only understanding different file formats and talking to people, completely reduce and take away that time and transfer that responsibility to Kyriba and bring faster time to value for our clients. And of course, lower the ongoing costs. Your IT expenses are reduced and your implementation time is reduced. What I'm showing here is a traditional way of bringing the data from bank into Blackline. So consider there are multiple files on the left-hand side. They're coming to our secure FTP server, and then the data get pulled in. And I'm using one of our solutions name over here, which is transaction matching, specifically because we are basically matching line item by line item transactions, which go into millions and millions of lines of data. And that's a very time consuming and very poorly done if you're trying to do that matching manually. So just using that solution as an example. And let's go to the next step. And what did we just do now? We just replaced that entire process by Kyriba. So all the bank data is coming easily into Blackline and helping us taking care of the bank import data, importing of bank data. Next step. And on the other hand, we are bringing data from different ERPs into BlackLine as well. So the reason I just put ERPs and not POS and other subledgers is because I'm trying to talk about GL transactions that are coming from multiple ERPs and data that is coming from multiple banks together in transaction matching engine. And people have achieved, some of our clients have achieved 99% matching of line item transactions, which go into millions, and that significantly reduces your time. It provides you, significantly reduces the risk, cost, time, as well as errors, and all this happens while you're sleeping. So next slide, please. Now, what does Kyriba and BlackLine do for operations in an organization? So all the manual work, all the copying of files and talking to different banks and talking to different ERP teams and trying to get data into BlackLine from bank and ERPs and POS systems and what have you, reduces the operation time significantly, provides you continuous accounting because you're constantly bringing in data on a daily basis from banks and from ERPs. You're constantly matching, you're constantly reconciling. So you're doing accounting at the speed of business and reducing the operations time at the same time, whereas releasing your FTEs, cutting cost is one of the things, but really using your accountants to provide you the real-time insights into the data. So you're telling the story to your business leaders, the story that your data is telling, not what you think it might be saying. So it helps you, create more focus into your business, create strategies, create more tactical changes if you want to do in your business, and of course provides you a great deal of automation opportunity. So what data connectivity does for us is it improves time availability. It decreases the time that it takes to do your business, reduces risks, and reduces costs, and improves employee morale. Why are your employees happy? Because they are now creating more value to the business. And people are happy when they know that they're creating value and their work is appreciated. And that's all the time I have, guys.
Yes, thank you so much, Anjali. And we just have a really quick poll that we're going to do to take the temperature of the audience. Again, this is our last poll. How often are you communicating with your accounting team? Let's get those responses in. Again, this is going to be a very short poll, maybe 15 or 20 seconds or so. The answers are weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. All right, looks like we have maybe about half the vote in. Maybe we can get that bumped up to that 60% mark. I don't think there are going to be really any surprises with this one, but it looks like on a weekly basis. All right, back to you, Kevin. Take us away.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. So Anjali covered the integrations between Kyriba and BlackLine and talked specifically about what benefits BlackLine brings. I want to now shift focus a little bit more towards Kyriba and why connectivity is so important for any treasury management system, but particularly Kyriba because it's the linchpin to all Kyriba's great features. So when we're talking about Kyriba or TMSs, what does connectivity bring us? Well, first and foremost, you can see here, no more manual intervention. If you traditionally work in Excel, or if you just have to go to various bank portals each day and pull down data, that's a very time-consuming process, right? Now with Kyriba and automated connectivity, every morning you have data waiting for you. So no more pulls from the bank portal, no more uploads, no more pivoting in Excel, crashing of systems, issues with versioning. This is a daily time saver. I like to think of it as, you're having your coffee and the data is being pulled into the system for you. That's beneficial on a real-time or a prior day basis, but it also allows you to have a repository of data that's preserved and auditable. Everything is centralized when you have connectivity sitting in a secure module like Kyriba's bank module. But connectivity doesn't just enable this kind of just simple pull of data into a system that sits there stagnant. It's also extremely dynamic, and this is the leading practice that we instill and implement for our clients, is that the bank module, as you can see here, it's not just a warehouse, but it's also a powerhouse. What we mean by that is that there are rules that we build in Kyriba so that the bank module reads and assigns each and every transaction that comes off the bank statement. So what that means is your transactions can be tagged in up to 4 ways. We have flow code, so that tells us, was this a wire, an ACH? What type of cash activity was this? We have budget codes. Those are more specific, usually client-specific codes that allow us to tell a little bit, give it a little bit more color to what that transaction actually represented. Maybe it'll be like a plus or minus for the specific vendor that paid you, or it'll tell us it's a tax payment or interest, right? And then those budget codes actually roll up to higher level grouping and parent codes. So what you get, as soon as that statement integrates, you don't have to rely on the bank's esoteric language, right? Whether it's BAI, MT940, CAMT, which can talk about a wire payment in 4 different ways. We store that language, but we don't use it to do our cash positioning, to do our decisioning. We have control over how our transactions are mapped, and that full taxonomy is built by us and automatically refreshed every single day. So that's first and foremost, just the cash positioning tagging is all done for you. But if you manage in-house banking, the system will also be able to scan upon that statement loading for any intercompany activity and add or reduce the lending and borrowing position of each company. So that means you're not just looking at your cash position in the morning, but you're also looking at your intercompany positions, automatically refreshed without any manual intervention. And then that data can even travel further downstream and automatically produce accounting entries. So that means a lot of manual work, whether it's grabbing the files, loading the files, crunching the data, tagging the data, journalizing that data, all that is done for you before you're even logging into the system. Without connectivity, none of that would be possible. In addition, you could see here, one more point, Chris, daily reporting. So if you have a cash position worksheet that needs to be distributed early in the morning, that the system will load the data and publish that report via email, or we can even do FTP reporting. So your reports are arriving in your mailbox such that users don't even need to log into the system sometimes to get an accurate portrait of what their cash holdings are. So this is eminently automated, scalable, and user-friendly, all because of connectivity. Next slide, please. There's so much more that connectivity allows us to do, some of which involves bank reporting further. So you can see here that automated bank statements and reports enable you to do several things. It's not just prior day data. You can get intraday data automatically loading, so you can get an accurate picture hour by hour of what your current cash holdings are, what activity has posted, what events that you forecasted for actually occurred, what are still forthcoming. And that allows you to then make cash decisions, right? Having data that feeds in automatically allows you to be more agile with your decisions, and allows you to make better decisions as well. Not only that, people have meetings, they have vacation. If cash needs to be moved, concentrated, you can build in predefined logic that if an account or a group of accounts fall beneath a threshold, Kyriba can automatically take that intraday data, any forecast that you're expecting, and then make a decision which can then be approved by a payment signer, so that somebody isn't manually making that decision if needed. This all can be automated because you have sound data undergirding your systems. Additionally, if you have overdrawn accounts or accounts that fall beneath a certain threshold, there are reports that can automatically be triggered as soon as your data loads. So you get real-time visibility into any issues with your bank account holdings. Now, I focused largely on what intraday and prior day bank statement reporting can do for you, but there's also fee analysis reports. So if you get your monthly fee analysis in an EDI or CAMT or TWIST format, Kyriba can automatically integrate that data and then take that data, look at your contractual charges, and flag any overcharges via a variance report. Again, no intervention needed. The bank will send that data to Kyriba. We'll have all your codes preloaded, all your charges predetermined, and then that variance report can automatically be emailed if there's even a single penny that you were charged more than you were supposed to. Fee analysis can take a lot of time, and it can be a very rewarding process if it's automated, and Kyriba can make that automation happen instantaneously. And then lastly, from a bank reporting perspective, Kyriba also has a business intelligence or analytics tool where that data can travel and you can produce custom reports, graphics, presentations that can be part of your inherent use of the system, or can travel for any kind of presentation you're making, perhaps C-level presentations. That data is rich, it's graphical, and it allows you to glean meaningful insights into patterns and make wise decisions with it. That is just what we get largely from our banks when you have sound connectivity integrating into a TMS. There's so much more, as we mentioned. If we just think of ERP's AP and AR data, your forecasts can load on a daily basis, even multiple times a day. So you're getting the freshest forecasted events, right? Receipts, payables, that can help you see where your cash is going to go or where your cash is coming in from. And then you can do variance reports from that. So when you go into your cash position, all you have to simply do is say, show me my forecast plus actuals plus intradays. And then you get a picture of not only where your cash stands, but where you anticipate it to go. This would not be easy or possibly even possible given the amount of hours we have in a day to do this in a manual fashion. With automation, with connectivity, you need extremely sound controls, right? Because the faster things move, the more efficient we become, the easier it is for fraud to go unnoticed if we don't have sound controls. So what does connectivity do for us to tighten our controls? And then what does Kyriba bring as an extra layer of defense to mitigate fraud? Well, first of all, connectivity minimizes human intervention. You don't have users grabbing files, pulling them down, whether that be a bank statement file, GL postings, payments. There's no intervention, right? Files move from system to system. Now, human error can occur if you're not doing this, if you're grabbing files manually, or malice can occur as well, right? You can easily manipulate a VAI file, an MT940 file that you grab from the bank portal before loading in Excel if you wanted to. This automation, this end-to-end connectivity obviates that risk. Moreover, if you have automation, you need to know when things go wrong, right? You don't want to automate to oblivion. So built-in alerts with Kyriba, e.g. a missing file alert. Your bank statement was supposed to come in at 7 a.m. Kyriba knows what time your statements are supposed to come in. It will send you an alert saying you're missing a statement, reach out to your bank. And as we mentioned before, as Brian mentioned, Kyriba also has IT support, right? So if there is a connection issue that's happening across all our clients for a particular platform, we're going to be working on it to make sure we get that connection reestablished as soon as possible. Additionally, when you have those system-to-system transmissions, you also build in an inherent confidence that when you're approving a payment, you're approving a journal entry, that no one is subsequently altering or has the potential to alter that information before it reaches the intended destination. That's similar to point one, but it's important particularly when we talk about accounting and payments as they move from Kyriba to either a bank or your GL. We want to be sure that sign off that you get from your authorized user is the end all and be all with no room for any kind of manipulation. Recognizing that we're a little low on time, I'll just high level the other points. When you have automation, that means we're not only sending payments, FX to financial institutions, but they're also sending us acknowledgments and confirmations back. You get that prompt visibility into a successful or rejected payment or FX deal. And crucially, you have an audit trail across systems. Again, there's no black box between system A and system B where someone's grabbing something and pulling it down from A, bringing it into B. You can see how data moves across systems without any gaps, which is crucial from an audit and controls perspective. This all rolls up into gaining increased, if not full, trust in the integrity of your data. And lastly, connectivity allows for eminent scalability, right? If you have to add more bank accounts, the bank connection's already there, right? You just enter the data into your TMS. You say, what new accounts are we adding? And then the data will flow in as soon as the banks include them on a bank statement or a fee file. If you need to bring in new AP and AR detail, that's fine because you already have the connection to your ERP. Same thing as you expand, merge, acquire new legal entities. You already have connections that will allow you to send data to an ERP that's inclusive of these new entities and new payment scenarios. If we need to make a different payment to a different region, well, we already are talking to the bank that we're making payments to, so we can just do a quick test to make sure the scenario passes as expected, and then we can start making payments to that new region. Very scalable. That makes asks for small projects like a new payments project much more palatable and allows your organization to grow at a fast clip. With only a few minutes left, Chris, I think I'll stop there and maybe we can open it up for questions.
Yes, we can definitely do that. We are a little bit short on time. I did have a question come in. I believe this is actually from the same individual. And since we are short on time for questions, I would advise if anyone has any additional questions to send those to treasury@kyriba.com. We'll answer those offline. There's a couple questions I've received throughout the session today that warrant a little bit of a longer response. But I did have a question come, I believe, from the same person that said, how do we engage Blackline if we're a Kyriba customer? And will the slides and recording be available for us to send to our respective accounting team? So that's a good question. And as I mentioned, you can contact us at treasury@kyriba.com, or you can work with your Kyriba representative to move forward too. The slides and the recording will be available to you afterwards. The recording is actually in chapter format, so you can just share specific chapters. Also, one thing I wanted to add is Anjali's contact information is here. If you want to quickly write that down. I think we only have less than a minute to go, so we're probably going to have to wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for attending today. I want to thank all of our speakers, Anjali, Kevin, and Brian, for their contributions. As I mentioned, the recording slides will be available to you within about 3 business days, so I'd say Monday at the very latest, along with the CTP and FP&A credits. And again, as I mentioned, if you have any outstanding questions, please send those to treasury@kyriba.com. I know we didn't quite cover everybody's questions, so we'll follow up with you offline. But that's going to do it for us today, and we hope everyone has a great rest of their week and weekend.